has been around in different forms since 2006. Over the years, the Agency of Agriculture has been working with our partners to refine the program to maximize its impact and best meet the needs of schools and early care providers. While the program has evolved substantially since 2006, the goals remain the same. Promote healthy eating, increase the use of local foods in schools and early care providers, work with partners to connect farm to school with educational goals, support the overall farm to institution supply chain, increase child and family participation in child nutrition programs, and enhance food programs in schools and child care facilities. It's important to note here that many people are interested in farm to school for different reasons. Some folks are really passionate about school gardens, but don't care much for procurement. Others may be interested in engaging with their local agricultural community, but aren't as interested in enhancing their child nutrition programs. The goal of this grant is to pull all of these components together into an integrated program. The Farm to School Child Nutrition Grant is structured around a holistic approach to farm to school programming. The program follows the 3 C's approach, which focuses on integrating farm to school activities throughout the cafeteria, the classroom, and the community. Grant activities are executed by a project team made up of diverse stakeholders within the organization and the organization's community. The ultimate goal is to create lasting farm to school programs that are integrated throughout an organization and supported by a collaborative team of people. Organizations that receive this grant will receive financial and technical assistance to strengthen and integrate each of the 3 pillars of farm to school. Put very simply, the Farm to School Child Nutrition Grant provides these 2 important components. So $15,000 in financial assistance, and then a suite of technical assistance and professional development. The financial assistance component of the grant is the most straightforward. Successful grantees will receive $15,000 in grant funds that can be spent on anything that directly relates to the goals of this program. This year, recently consolidated school districts are eligible for larger awards, up to $25,000. Acceptable expenditures include personnel, supplies, local food, professional development activities, and equipment. The grant funds are dispersed in 4 payments throughout the grant period and are tied to specific deliverables. I'll dive deeper into deliverables in a later slide, but I want to make the important point that the release of funds is not contingent on the verification of receipts or invoices. There is always a lot of confusion around this point, as many people assume the funding is there to reimburse the organization for costs incurred, which is not the case. While we won't be asking for receipts and itemized invoices, there will be financial oversight. Grantees will be required to submit information about how they plan to use the funds and will work with their teams to create a project budget during the grant. Once the grant period ends, grantees will be asked to submit a final report that includes information about how the grant funds were spent. The other component of the grant is a suite of technical assistance that is delivered throughout the first year of the grant. I'll talk in much more detail about this a little later, but know that the technical assistance is free to the grantees and is also a required component of the grant. It's also important to note that the grant period is 2 years. Generally speaking, year 1 of the grant is when grantees complete their technical assistance and create a plan for their team going forward. Year 2 is when the team executes the plan. And I'll get into a little more detail about timelines in a second. We found that engaging multiple stakeholders across an organization has proven to be the most effective method of building and embedding lasting programs. When we look at why farm-to-school programs fail to succeed, it is often because they are only supported by 1 or 2 passionate individuals. When those individuals move on or burn out, the program tends to fade. As part of the grant requirements, each grantee will establish a project team made up of diverse stakeholders within the organization and the surrounding community. Examples of stakeholders include educators, administrators, food service staff, and community members. Generally, teams are made up of 5 to 7 people and must include 1 administrative member, a superintendent, principal, or early care director, for example, and one member who is the food service director or manager. We also encourage applicants to seek representation from each of the categories shown here. These are just some examples of folks that might fit in those categories. There are sometimes questions about the project team requirement, as different organizations are structured differently. Individuals may be playing multiple roles, or an application may come from a consortium of organizations. There is additional guidance on project teams in the grant application document, but don't hesitate to reach out directly with specific questions, or again, we can address some of them in the Q&A. The project team will work together throughout the grant period, from the application to the execution of their action plan. One key role of the project team is participation in the technical assistance activities, which is required by at least some of the project team members. Each technical assistance workshop will be customized to meet the needs and goals of individual grantees and targeted at specific members of the team. Technical assistance workshops will be scheduled to meet the availability of the grantee and project team, but must be completed within the first year of the grant period. So in addition to the financial assistance, this slide is to help explain some of the technical assistance. Technical assistance comes in the form of workshops and one-on-one trainings that address different goals of farm to school. For the most part, workshops and trainings will be scheduled to meet the availability of the grantee and project team and will be customized to fit their specific needs. Technical assistance is provided by subject matter experts from partner organizations and is delivered during the first year of the grant. Central to the technical assistance and the grant program in general is the coaching support. Each grantee will be assigned a coach who will work with them throughout the duration of the grant period. Coaches are experts from within the Vermont Farm to School network. And through site visits, email communication, and phone calls, coaches will provide direct support to grantees, helping them create a project budget, navigate the other technical assistance workshops, and provide general assistance to the project team and organization. Procurement training is provided through on-site training and professional development with a local food procurement expert. Topics may include values-based procurement, forward contracting, solicitation process with local farmers, and developing product specifications for bid solicitations. Procurement training is targeted towards food service managers and staff with the goal of increasing the purchase and use of local and regional food. We estimate a total commitment of 5 hours for the procurement training. Curriculum development takes the form of 2 half-day on-site workshops administered by a farm-to-school curriculum expert. Workshops may cover best practices in integrating food, farm, and nutrition education into curriculum and aligning that curriculum with Vermont education standards. The curriculum expert will work with the grantee to identify content specific to the grantee's needs. These workshops are targeted at faculty and educators with the goal of integrating farm to school activities into the classroom. We estimate a total amount of 12 hours of commitment for the curriculum workshops over the grant period. Child nutrition program viability is training in the form of one-on-one site visits, as well as follow-up phone calls provided by a child nutrition program expert. Training will focus on improving participation in federal meal programs through a variety of tools and outreach methods. The target audience is school food service managers and staff with an estimated commitment of 12 hours. And school garden workshops are held off-site and are scheduled for a time and place that is most convenient for multiple grantees. Workshops cover critical aspects of successful school garden projects, as well as information on how to integrate school gardens into a comprehensive farm-to-school program. In addition to workshops, grantees can request up to 2 hours of additional technical and planning assistance from the service provider. These workshops are targeted at any interested members of the grantee organization and require a 3 to 8 hour commitment depending on the format. Grantees can substitute a different professional development opportunity for the school garden workshop if desired. The alternative activity will not be funded through the support services component of this grant, but can be paid for using grant funds. Alternative activities must be pre-approved by me, the program manager. With few exceptions, participation in these technical assistance activities is required by at least some members of your project team. Grantees will have a chance to meet the service providers and communicate with them and their coaches about their needs and interests. Technical assistance activities are free for grantees, but there may be costs associated with sending staff off-site or scheduling them to work outside normal business hours. And grant funds can be used to offset these costs. So let's look now at the grant timeline to get a better sense of when things are happening. The first most important deadline that is actually not on this slide is the due date for applications, which is November 21st by noon. And I'll talk about that a couple more times before we're finished. Successful and unsuccessful applicants will be notified of their awards on December 20th of this year. Successful applicants will receive an award packet in early January, which will contain all the documents, including their grant agreement. Once the award packets are received, grantees will sign their grant agreement and submit a claim to receive their first payment of $4,500. So just to back up a little bit, the disbursements of claims are broken up into 4 different payments. So if you receive $15,000, you'll receive 3 payments of $4,500 and a final payment of $1,500. Grantees will receive their funds so long as they complete the required activity or deliverable and properly submit a claim. Once the grant agreement is signed and approved and the first payment has been made, grantees will attend the Farm to School Awareness Day, which is an annual event that occurs at the Vermont State House during the legislative session. At least one member of each grantee project team is required to attend. Attendees will participate in an award ceremony with representatives from all the Farm to School grant recipient towns for that year. Prior to the award ceremony, grantees will attend a 1.5-hour onboarding workshop. Between the winter onboarding workshop, after the Farm to School Awareness Day, we'll be scheduling a more in-depth onboarding workshop for grantee teams. That will cover lots of information about how to use web grants, expectations, deliverables, and it'll be an opportunity for people to meet the technical assistance service providers, as well as their coach, and get together with other project teams. Grantees are encouraged to send as many members of their project teams as feasible to that onboarding workshop. Between the winter onboarding workshop and December 31st of 2020 is when grantees will be meeting with their coaches, participating in technical assistance, and creating a plan for their project team going forward. So this is when all the technical assistance will be happening, and this is when most of the deliverables will need to be submitted, and I'll talk about that in the next slide. The second year of the grant is when the grantee will work with their coach to execute the plan they've made during the first year. After the grant period closes on December 31st, 2021, grantees will have 30 days to submit a final report and receive their last installment of grant funds. So I mentioned, and you saw on that last slide, a few deliverables. And again, just to reiterate, the grant funds are dispersed in payments that are tied to these deliverables. And so there are essentially 6 things that grantees are required to submit to me, the program manager, through their web grants account over the entire course of the grant. Grantees will receive assistance from their coaches in completing the deliverables, but ultimately they're the ones responsible for completing and submitting them. As I said, all 6 deliverables will be submitted online through the web grants management system, which I'll talk about in a little bit. We could spend an entire day talking about web grants, and it's a little tricky to sort of sequence some of the knowledge about that and not get lost in the weeds. But We'll cover a little bit about how to apply using web grants at the end, but in the context of submitting claims, just know that if you are a successful grantee, you'll receive a lot of assistance in how to training on how to use web grants and submit claims. So let's talk about the first two deliverables, which are due June 30th, 2020. So a few months after grantees receive their grant award. It must be uploaded to web grants, and they are the local food definition and the local food tracking mechanism. One of the goals of this grant program is to increase a grantee's purchase and use of local foods. Creating a definition of local food specific to your organization and tracking food purchases are necessary to meet the reporting requirements for this grant. These two deliverables are meant to prepare grantees for successful tracking of this data. Once these deliverables have been submitted, it's expected that grantees will start tracking their local food purchases if they haven't already. The second installment of grant funds, $4,500, will be dispersed once these deliverables have been submitted and approved. So each grantee is required to establish their own definition of local food. The definition should represent the values of the school, community, and project team, and there's really no right or wrong answer. Tracking mechanisms are simple tools for collecting and organizing data around food purchases. An example tracking template will be provided to grantees at the onboarding workshop, which they are encouraged to customize for their unique needs. Along with a copy of the tracking mechanism, grantees will be required to identify a project team member who will be responsible for tracking food purchases going forward. The second due date comes at the end of the first year of the grant. 3 things are required at this point: an interim status report, a completed action plan, and a completed farm-to-school rubric. Interim status reports require narrative responses to an established list of questions. So grantees will submit their responses through an online form which they can access through web grants. These reports capture a significant amount of qualitative and quantitative information which can take time to gather. And a copy of the questions will be provided to grantees with their award packets. So you'll have about a year to review that and understand what's required of you. The Farm to School rubric is an assessment tool to be completed by the project team, and it's used to measure the development stage of a grantee's Farm to School program and is valuable in informing action planning. The action plan is a tool that will be used to guide the planning and implementation of a grantee's Farm to School goals. Grantees will work with their project teams and assign coach to develop their action plan. We also have copies of the Farm to School rubric and the action plan linked in the request for applications for this grant. The final report is due 30 days after the end of the grant period and is meant as an assessment of the qualitative and quantitative impacts of the grant program. Like interim status reports, final reports require grantees to submit their answers to questions via web grants. The final installment of grant funds, $1,500, will be released upon submission and approval of the final report. So we'll turn now to talking about how to apply, and the first step is determine if you're eligible. So all of these organizations listed here are eligible to apply. And if you have any questions about your eligibility, please don't hesitate to contact me directly via phone or email. So as you can see, we're here at the webinar. The next due date is one of probably the most important, which is when the applications are due to web grants. That's November 21st at noon, and that means they need to be submitted and uploaded and complete at that time. Once you successfully submit your application through web grants, you will be directed to an application submitted confirmation, and you'll receive a confirmation email. So if you are submitting your application, you don't see those things, just double check on that. And again, don't leave it to the last minute. We are available to help, but it can get a little bit hectic if you're calling right up until the deadline. We will not accept submission or resubmission of incomplete or delayed applications after the posted deadline, barring exceptional circumstances. So I've referenced it a couple times, but the best place to start is with the request for applications document, which you can find on our website at this link here. The RFA provides a comprehensive overview of the grant program and the requirements of grantees. All the information presented in this webinar is available in the RFA document in even greater detail, except for the picture of me in a duck suit. The RFA also includes a copy of the full application with a list of all the required documents and questions your team will need to answer. Additionally, it includes an overview of our evaluation process, which is especially helpful in determining what a strong application looks like. If you can't find the RFA document for some reason, you can try Googling it, or again, you can call us or email us direct. Couple things to know as you're getting started that may make the process work a little more efficiently for you. Again, review the RFA. It's a big document, but it really contains all the information you need to submit a competitive application, and it should answer most of your questions about the process, how the grant program works, expectations, deliverables, timelines. All of that information is in there. So you really want to make sure you spend some time with that document and familiarize yourself with it. You want to organize your project team. So gather the people that will be participating in the grant itself and helping with the application. You'll want to organize your letters of support. So each application requires usually 4 letters of support depending on the structure of your organization. So for most organizations, we require a superintendent, a principal or director, food program director or manager, and the organization's fiscal agent, if that's different from the above individuals. And again, if you consult the RFA document about that, it should be a little more clear which letters of support to submit in lieu of others if your organization isn't structured in a traditional way. And again, we're always happy to answer questions about that. The information listed at the bottom there, so the grades and ages served, the number of children served, percentage of children, those are also required information for the application. So just know that before you sit down to start filling that out, you will at some point need that information. The other thing I will say is these applications are started and submitted through web grants, and you can return to them and save different components of them. So while this will get you started and maybe make the process more efficient, it's not required that you sit down and do the whole thing in one sitting. So web grants, as I've mentioned a number of times, is our agency's grants management system. And it's an online platform that acts as a central location for managing and updating all our agency's grant programs. Applications for this and every other grant program that the Vermont Agency of Ag supports must be submitted through web grants. And I will say candidly, or not so candidly, since this is a webinar, up front that web grants can be a little bit cumbersome. It's not the most intuitive system, but it works pretty well, and we have a lot of support documents and a lot of great professionals on staff who can help people navigate it. Another important thing to note is that when you're starting your application, if you haven't registered with web grants in the past, you're going to have to register to create a new account. The easiest thing to do is to start the registration account under the fiscal agent's name. And the reason for that is that the grants agreements, if you are successful with your application, they live with the fiscal agent and they have to legally be signed by the fiscal agent. If you do start an application we can link multiple people to that application. So say the fiscal agent starts the application but doesn't have the time to fill out the complete thing. You can notify us and we can go in and add another contact person to that application, and other people can fill out the application as a team or as individuals. The other reason to involve your fiscal agent is, again, just because they have to sign off on this, and they're the ones legally responsible for agreeing to the grant. And so involving them at the front end is really important, and you'll have to get a lot of support from them anyways. If you suspect your organization already has a Web Grants account, but you're not sure, you can always reach out to us and we can check on that for you. So once you've created an account and a profile, you'll log in and you'll see this main menu at the top on your right. And to find this grant opportunity, you'll click on that funding opportunity there in the middle there. Once you click on that funding opportunity, you'll see the screen below that titled Current Funding Opportunity. And the name for this grant is FY20 Farm to School Child Nutrition Grant. So then go ahead and click on that grant, and that will take you to the next page. This is what the next page will look like. You'll be inside of the grant. And in order to start an application, you'll have to click up at the top right there. You click that and you'll see this list down below that once you click on the Start a New Application. And you'll see the application forms on your left, general information, applicant information, on and on and on. These are all the required forms for submitting the application. You look over at the complete category, that will tell you if you've filled that out and saved it as complete. And then it'll give you under last edited, the last time you edited that. As you open these forms on the left, it's important to note that you'll be opening them in view only mode. So you'll open the general information, it'll take you to a view only mode, and then you won't be able to actually put information or answer questions until you click on an icon up on the right that says edit. And once you click that edit, it'll open the form and you'll be able to populate it. Every form needs to have a checkpoint beside them as complete before the application can be submitted as complete. So this provides you a nice landing page just to make sure that you've got everything you need. As I said, we have a number of different resources for how to work with web grants. We have Diana Ferguson, who's part of our grants and contracts team, whose contact is listed at the bottom here. We also have tutorials online. So if you click that hyperlink or follow that web address, you'll be taken to a PDF that will walk you through how to apply to different grant opportunities at the Agency of Ag. We do have additional tutorials on how-to documents. And then, as I said earlier, if you are a successful grantee, then you will receive with your award packet some more information about how to work with web grants. So just some general grant writing tips. Again, start with that RFA, familiarize yourself with it, really understand what the project goals are, what the goals of the grant program are. Focus on really creating a cohesive project team. You want part of the evaluation that we're scoring people on is how strong that project team is. So how well you communicate, how diverse your representation is, aspects like that. And again, in the RFA is an evaluation section that you can see exactly how we're scoring the different applications. So definitely something to pay attention to. Identify and include your fiscal agent. They're a very key person in this grant project. Keep it simple, clear, and realistic. Strong responses are definitely thoughtful and definitely realistic. So we are not looking for people necessarily who are already very established with their farm to school program or the opposite of that. We're looking for people who have the capacity and are organized in a way to really execute what they're proposing. Make sure your child nutrition program is on board. Again, review the RFA, and then think about the 3 C's. That's a big part of how Farm to School is structured in this grant, and we're really looking for applicants who can incorporate all 3 of those into their proposals and aren't just interested in 1 or 2. Also wanted to just point out quickly some resources. The Vermont Farm to School Network is a really robust resource for folks interested in farm to school funding opportunities and activities and best practices. There are lots of people across the state who are really wonderful and knowledgeable about these things, and a lot of them are plugged into the Farm to School network. So it's easy and free to sign in and log on, and I would encourage you all to do so. And then also take some time. We have some great farm to school resources listed on our website, which is just a screenshot here of some of them. But under the Vermont Agency of Agriculture, Food and Markets, you can navigate down to farm to school resources and then find lots of information about past grantees, different resources from other places, and ways to get plugged in. So I mentioned I would touch on the infrastructure grants briefly. The infrastructure grants provide Vermont schools and early care providers with financial resources to purchase infrastructure that will improve their food programs and or farm to school / farm to early care programs. The same entities are eligible to apply for the infrastructure grant as are eligible to apply for the farm to school grant. I also note that in years past, the infrastructure grant has been divided into early care applicants and pre-K through 12 applicants. And the pre-K through 12 have only been eligible to receive funding for milk coolers. There's a change in the program this year where early care and schools can apply to purchase any infrastructure that will support the farm to school goals. So schools are no longer tied to just purchasing milk coolers. They're $1,000 grants, and they're, unlike the farm to school grants, they are reimbursement based. So the way that works is if you submit a successful application, you'll sign a grant agreement, you'll go out and purchase the equipment that you said you would purchase in your application, and then you will upload on WebGrants a receipt and an invoice for that purchase, and then we will reimburse you $1,000 to offset the cost of that. They're 1-year grants. The applications open next week, October 21st. They close on December 3rd, 2019, also at noon. And that means that they need to be uploaded and submitted to WebGrants at noon. And then the final point on that is that you're not eligible to receive both a farm to school grant and an infrastructure grant in the same year. So as I said, I'm Trevor Lowell. I'm the program manager for this grant and the infrastructure grants. We also have Diana Ferguson, who's our grants and contract point of contact for this program. And we are available during regular business hours to answer questions about any of these programs, or as I said at the beginning, I'm available to answer questions, just general questions about farm to school and procurement. So if there are questions, feel free to submit them into the chat function on the right there, and I will hang out for a little while. And if there are any questions, then I'll close it down in a couple minutes. But thank you all for joining us, and good luck submitting applications.